Boom, baby. We are live. Welcome to the Tokyo Crypto Show, episode 130. Okay. So we're a little late today. Had my wisdom teeth taken out yesterday, about 24 hours ago. And yeah, you can probably tell I'm a little swollen here. But the Federal Reserve just had their meeting, and Jerome Powell has raised interest rates by 75 basis points, and the market seems to be reacting positively so far. And they just finished their Federal Reserve live meeting. So what we're going to do here today is we're actually going to review the entire live meeting. Basically, he says that they are going to continue raising interest rates. They don't plan on stopping anytime soon. This falls into my prediction earlier this year when I said that I'm pretty sure they're going to raise interest rates every month until the end of the year. It's November. They've raised the rates once again. And so now we got to see December. And Jerome Powell hinted, and we're going to watch the video here in a little bit, that he was 100% not going to stop. And he said inflation hasn't changed. It hasn't gotten any better. We're same place where we were last year. Now, this is coming directly from the Federal Reserve, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. However, I truly believe that I've been thinking lately, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see raise rates into 2023, because I think there's a lot of room because the amounts of money that was printed in, yes, King Life, this is live. The amount of money that was printed during the Corona pandemic around the world, I just don't think the average person really kind of can contemplate that. And the reason you raise interest rates is to slow down the velocity of money. That is what kind of quells inflation. Okay. So, also, we're going to talk about this. Okay. So, somebody was killed recently in crypto. I don't know if you guys know about this, but there's a lesson in this. There's a guy, he was 29 years old, and he was he's formerly working with the creation of some stablecoins. MakerDAO co-founder. He was 29 years old. His name's Nikolai Arkady Muchigan, and he was killed recently. And the last thing, we're going to talk about that later. We're going to go into the details of that story as well. But this is more about just the direction crypto's heading and understanding what's going on. So I'll just show you this real quick. We're going to go into it, the Federal Reserve video. This is his last tweet. This was at 5:57 p.m. October 28th, 2022. The CIA, Mossad, and pedo elite are running some kind of sex trafficking entrapment black ring out of Puerto Rico, Caribbean islands. They're going to frame me with a laptop planted by my ex-girlfriend, who is a spy. They will torture me to death. This guy was rumored to have $1 billion in Bitcoin, and he was 100% recently found dead the other day. I think it was yesterday. And the reason for his death is they said that he died swimming. So anytime there's like murky situations around a death, like it's not 100%, consistent and concrete in what they're saying. Usually there's something around there, and it just shows you that these governments are really, if they're willing to go around killing people, who knows? This could all be full blown conspiracy theory, right? Who knows? But kind of creepy. And I feel like I needed to talk about this just to bring awareness kind of to the situation. But first things first, we're going to go to the Jerome Powell reaction here, because very important to see what was said. This was just finished. This live stream just finished about maybe 10 minutes ago. Just let me know if you guys can hear this in the chat. This is the beginning of the meeting right here. There's no sound yet. Hold on.
Stability, inflation.
Here we go. Some of you guys need a sound.
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I are strongly committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal.
Okay. And it looks like we have a super chat here. I'm going to keep the captions on as well. Real quick, King Life 499. I got to thank you, MLD, for having Myron Fresh back last year in August. Now they're at 1 million. You're a real one. Hey, don't forget, your boy has figured out the algorithm. We're at 53,000. I know all the homies are huge, okay? But I have figured it out. And I think I'm going to be at 100,000 by spring if we don't get lucky.
Shut up and take my money.
There's a super chat right there. Thanks so much. By spring, if we don't get lucky, with another viral. We had 3 viral videos in 2 months. One is approaching 9 million. One is approaching 3.5. The other one has 3.1 or 3.2. So we're growing over here. But thank you for the super chat. And let's stay focused on this. We got to be a little bit more serious. But their goal is to bring the interest rate down, or excuse me, the interest rate, bring the inflation rate down to 2%. And currently, they have raised interest rates. So here we go.
We have both the tools that we need and the resolve it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses. Price stability is the responsibility of the Federal Reserve and serves as the bedrock of our economy. Without price stability, the economy does not work for anyone. In particular, without price stability, we will not achieve a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. Today, the FOMC raised our policy interest rate by 75 basis points, and we continue to anticipate that ongoing.
So basis points are like, it's very confusing for a reason, but basically 100 basis points is 1%. So they have raised the interest rates today by 0.75%. They use this confusing language and these fucking retarded code things. Sorry for my language there, guys. Just to make it like really difficult. Because if it was important, they would want everybody to know. You know what I mean? But the unnecessary difficultiness of this is just, it's intentional.
Going increases will be appropriate. We are moving our policy stance purposefully to a level that will be sufficiently restrictive to.
That's what he says here.
Without price stability.
All right, I'm just not going to interrupt. Just listen to this first opening statement.
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I are strongly committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal. We have both the tools that we need and the resolve it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses. Price stability is the responsibility of the Federal Reserve and serves as the bedrock of our economy. Without price stability, the economy does not work for anyone. In particular, without price stability, we will not achieve a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. Today, the FOMC raised our policy interest rate by 75 basis points, and we continue to anticipate that ongoing increases will be appropriate. We are moving our policies.
So ongoing increases will be appropriate. So they don't have any plans to slow down the hiking of the interest rates. Now, for me, guys, I personally look at this. I think this is good because I think if you're smart right now and you just buckle down with your savings, because I think Americans live in overabundance. I think nobody keeps track of their money, which is very, I know I'm right. Nobody keeps track of their money. They live in such abundance. This is why nobody keeps track of their calories in America too. There's just so much abundance, but everybody's just consuming. And it's like this fucking, gluttony fest of money out there because people are just not really responsible with their money. Like, every day getting Uber Eats, going fucking Starbucks, like, paying $8 a coffee and you make like $4,000 a month. Like, it's just total. People are just living well beyond their means, but they're not even aware of it. So I think if they tighten the money and the economy gets a little tighter, I do think that people will survive. I don't think we're going to be like, it's going to be the streets of fucking San Francisco and everybody's just going to be like, this ghetto apocalypse. It's not like that. And especially if you're a guy like us who watch, my kind of stuff, see Money Muscles, Game Frame, you're on your money no matter what. Recession, fucking bull market, bear market, doesn't matter. You're on your money. It's funny too, in this, he refuses to admit that we're currently in a recession. So more of that like newspeak bullshit, because technically we are in a recession because we've had 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, and we're probably going to head into another one, but they're fudging the numbers. And so they're lying, trying to keep everything under control. However, I do think it's going to be fine. I honestly think they could hike interest rates all the way into 2023 and even all of 2023. and everybody would still be fine. I just think that they're really trying their hardest to slow down the velocity of all that money they spent during the Corona shit. And then, another thing that's kind of interesting is it seems to me there's still, and now I don't know exactly how this works, but all this money that's going to Ukraine, they're printing that, or is that in a storage somewhere? I don't know, but that I'm taking that into account as well. But still, the amount of money we printed was insane. And then now they're doing the student loan forgiveness. Let me just tell you guys something else today personally. Okay, so I paid off all my student loans today. I paid them, and accidentally, because the government had a fucking multiple shitty websites, I actually overpaid. So I paid like $22,000 off today in student loan that I owed. Fucking, I never paid them, right? I took out like 16 G's and the $5,000 of interest payments got on them. And for me to call this fucking government today, it took me 2 hours to call them to like argue with these. It was 4 individual chicks, all rude, all jaded with their job, like typical call center bullshit. And I'm like, I'm trying to pay my loan in full, and you guys are giving me the fucking runaround. It's like, this is the organization the government's running, and I end up paying to this website. They calculated the number wrong. I can't get a refund, and I'm not going to get any proof of this being handled until 3 to 5 business days, allegedly, right? So it's a total mess as well, and they're doing that. They're forcing you to go like do this student loan recovery thing. And there's still a lot of money floating around. So I don't think I think people are just like not taking care of themselves financially. They're not keeping an eye on what they're spending. You can go to mint.com and use all that for free, man. Like link up your information and track your fucking spending. Get on your money grind. Well, I am. And the people who are successful are. So this recession isn't that bad. And then when the bull market comes, then we make a fuckload of money, right? But anyways, that's what we're dealing with today. And he says right now, they don't plan on pumping the brakes anytime soon. And he reiterates that point over and over and over again.
Stance purposefully to a level that will be sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2%. In addition, we're continuing the process of significantly reducing the size of our balance sheet. Restoring price stability will likely require maintaining a restrictive stance of policy for some time. I will have more to say about today's monetary policy actions after briefly reviewing economic developments. The U.S. economy has slowed significantly from last year's rapid pace. Real GDP rose at a pace.
Last year, so 7 days, last year, Bitcoin hit the all-time high. It was on November 10th, 2021. Bitcoin hit that second top of that all-time high and really shocked the world and put everybody in this crazy state of false euphoria because people were just so determined thinking Bitcoin's going to go to 100,000, and it didn't. And a lot of people think that was a liquidity exit, that second top, and I could believe that too. But compared to where we are today to last year, like it was like fucking, like cocaine peak party, 4 a.m. and then like now we're like 6 p.m. the next day, still awake. And it's not good. We were in a crazy money printing fucking delusion last year. And, it does this. And I look at it like this, right? We're retracting right now, and this is healthy because we need to go down, right? But the way I'm looking at it is like this. Every time we go down, we're just like pulling the slingshot back further and further and further for us to get sent forward. You know what I mean? The markets have been reacting to this meeting as well. And they are slightly down right now. In crypto, it's down to about 2% and it's the actually here, let me just pull the chart right here. So Bitcoin is down 2% in the last hour. Okay. And then Ethereum's down 4.7%. So nothing too crazy. We'll see what happens. But these are also have been pumped up recently. But yeah, like I said, we have plenty of room to go down. We're gonna see. We're gonna see how the markets react because I think it's just we're gonna have to play this out month by month. Watch the interest rates, see if crypto takes a hit. Watch the interest rates because this guy's literally like to an extent controlling the global economy right now, and he's the only one with balls that say we gotta just fucking Stop the shit. But it's all a scam. They have to turn the money printers back on eventually. That's what you guys don't get. So we're in this back thing now. And then when we shoot forward, you take profits early in the next bull market. Don't get overgraded. You now is the time to making your investments. And then when the bull market comes, 2025-ish, that's when you cash out. But everybody's going to start making investments in 2025 and get burned like they did last year. They thought, oh, bull market, it's my first time in crypto, 2021. Yeah, I'm totally going to make it out alive. Totally. Me, no skill, barely educated on anything. Yeah, I made a couple grand in the first weeks because you're in the middle of bull market. But then people get wrecked and then they're like, what the fuck? But it's like, dude, this is a process. You don't just become super successful instantaneously in anything you do. You have to be understanding that this is your beginner cycle in the journey of crypto, and you have to get good. Because I went through my beginner cycle. 2016, 2017 was my beginner cycle, and I've been doing this for a while now. And so, you know, the last bull run, I was able to get my gold Rolex here. This was it's not that much, it's just like 150 G's, but it was a dream. And it was a goal that I set out at the beginning of the market. But I was buying crypto for 2021 in 2019 and 2020. I made a few purchases in 2021, but the majority of them made in 2019, 2020. So I'm telling you, this is good. In my opinion, and I'm not a financial expert, and you can fucking Trustpilot review bomb me all you want, guys. Okay, knock me out. But I'm just telling you, in my personal opinion, I think the raising these interest rates is a good thing. I think it's going to bring some soberness to market. I think there's too many dummies with money. Money's flying everywhere. And so that being said, I think people can tighten up and we can kind of just get the inflation down, assuming he's telling the truth. But again, the truth of the matter is he doesn't plan on fucking dropping these interest rates and he keeps on raising them. That's a fact that we got to focus on. But I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing.
Of 2.6% last quarter, but is unchanged so far this year. Recent indicators point to modest growth of spending and production this quarter. Growth in consumer spending has slowed from last year's rapid pace, in part reflecting lower real disposable income and tighter financial conditions. Activity in the housing sector has weakened significantly, largely reflecting higher mortgage rates. Higher interest rates and slower output growth also appear to be weighing on business fixed investment. Despite the slowdown in growth, the labor market remains extremely tight, with the unemployment rate at a 50-year low, job vacancies still very high.
So the employment rate, just so you guys know, if somebody, because people just think it's the percentage of people in America that are unemployed, okay? But no, it's the people who are actively looking for a job and unemployed. That is the unemployment rate. Okay. But the people who just give up on the unemployment rate and say, fuck it, I'm just going to fucking give up and live off my savings or live off my parents, or, I play poker online, make like $300 a week. I'll just live off of that shit. The United States government, the unemployment data, they don't calculate those people into the percentage. So the unemployment number is relatively deceptive.
And wage growth elevated. Job gains have been robust, with employment rising by an average of 289,000 jobs per month over August and September. Although job vacancies have moved below their highs and the pace of job gains has slowed from earlier in the year, the labor market continues to be out of balance, with demand substantially exceeding the supply of available workers. The labor force participation rate is little changed since the beginning of the year. Inflation remains well above our longer run goal of 2%. Over the 12 months ending in September, total PCE prices rose 6.2%, excluding the volatile food and energy categories.
Just give me 1 second. I want to see something. Look at my fucking swollen face. Jesus, say the word. All right, here we go.
Categories. Core PCE prices rose 5.1%. And the recent inflation data again have come in higher than expected. Price pressures remain evident across a broad range of goods and services. Russia's war against Ukraine has boosted prices for energy and food and has created additional upward pressure on inflation. Despite elevated inflation, longer-term inflation expectations appear to remain well anchored, as reflected in a broad range of surveys of households businesses, and forecasters, as well as measures from financial markets. But that is not grounds for complacency. The longer the current bout of high inflation continues, the greater the chance that expectations of higher inflation will become entrenched. The Fed's monetary policy actions are guided by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. My colleagues and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. We are highly attentive to the risks that high inflation poses to both sides of our mandate, and we're strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% objective. At today's meeting, the committee raised the target range for the federal funds rate by 75 basis points. And we are continuing the process of significantly reducing the size of our balance sheet, which plays an important role in firming the stance of monetary policy. With today's action, we've raised interest rates by 3.75 percentage points this year. We anticipate that ongoing increases in the target range for the federal funds rate will be appropriate in order to attain a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to return inflation to 2% over time. Financial conditions have tightened.
So if you guys don't understand what he's saying, he says we want to continue raising interest rates until we get to 2% inflation, according to them, according to their numbers. So let's see, what percentage is inflation in USA? All right. So here we are. Okay. These are current U.S. inflation rates. The annual inflation rate for the United States is 8.2% for the 12 months ended September 22nd, after raising 8.3% previously, according to U.S. Labor Department data published on October 13th. So he wants to get us back down to 2%. So this is back to 2020. Okay, this is like when looks like when Big Daddy Trump came into office, 2016, inflation did go up to 2, went down a little bit, but during Obama, during these last term, it was pretty low. So we're up here at 8%, but he wants to get back down to basically 2020, 2019 levels, even 2018. So 2018 was the bear market of after the big bull run, the first massive one we had in crypto. Very interesting. But these interest rates haven't been this high. Inflation rates. This is 100% because of the coronavirus money printing. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. It's not going to. When we see back down to 2%, that's when we know we're laying those seeds for the upcoming bull run. I still think 2025 we're going to have a bull run.
Significantly in response to our policy actions, and we are seeing the effects on demand in the most interest rate sensitive sectors of the economy, such as housing. It will take time, however, for the full effects of monetary restraint to be realized, especially on inflation. That's why we say in our statement that in determining the pace of future increases in the target range, we will take into account the cumulative tightening of monetary policy and the lags with which monetary policy affects economic activity and inflation. At some point, as I've said in the last 2 press conferences, it will become appropriate to slow the pace of increases as we approach the level of interest rates that will be sufficiently restrictive to bring inflation down to our 2% goal. There is significant uncertainty around that level of interest rates. Even so, we still have some ways to go, and incoming data since our last meeting suggests that the ultimate level of interest rates will be higher than previously expected. Our decisions will depend on the totality of incoming data and their implications for the outlook for economic activity and inflation. We will continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting and communicate our thinking as clearly as possible. We're taking forceful steps to moderate demand so that it comes into better alignment with supply. Our overarching focus is using our tools to bring inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keep longer-term inflation expectations well anchored.
And so this is the fourth meeting in a row they have had, right? And they have raised the interest rates 4 meetings in a row. And he says again, we are not stopping. We're going to keep going. So factor that in, because a lot of the boomers still get a lot of money, and they view this sentiment as negative. So a lot of the money is going to slow down. But like I said, it's just you got to take your medicine. It's what we need after all that fucking drunken, crazy money printing sex party we had last year with just no responsibility, just printing. Everybody gets money. They're giving people money away if you just had an LLC. They were like, I knew a guy that had a dog business, right? And he had an LLC. And just because he had an LLC for his dog training, dog grooming business, he got 20 G's just for that. There's a guy that I knew in Japan. Well, actually, he's the guy who does all my commercials, right? He has a Japanese LLC. And at the time, they were like, oh, we're giving, monetary like reliefs. These are grants. These are not loans. You just get this for free. He also got $20,000 here in Japan. So there's just this global money printing sexapalooza. And it was just a filthy, nasty, just free for all. And no responsibility, nothing. Everybody's raw dogging each other. And now we're like, okay, now we got to take the medicine. Now I got to take the antibiotics. Now I got to get to bed on time. It's just unreal. But this is the medicine. You got to do what you got to do.
Reducing inflation is likely to require a sustained period of below-trend growth and some softening of labor market conditions. Restoring price stability is essential to set the stage for achieving maximum employment and stable prices in the longer run.
Mm-hmm.
The historical record cautions strongly against prematurely loosening policy. We will stay the course until the job is done. To conclude, we understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission.
Oh, yeah.
We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
So now the press is pretty hard on him, which is good. Okay, so it looks like the next meeting is December 14th and 15th, okay? So mark your calendars, boys and girls. Middle of December, we're getting a fucking rate hike. I said it. I called it at the beginning when we were talking about them raising rates, and you guys watching the previous Tokyo Crypto shows, I said they are absolutely going to keep on raising rates, and they're going to be drilling down on this money velocity because it is what they need to do to fucking recover a semblance of a real economy, not just flooded with fake fucking money everywhere. I mean, and again, let me go back to the free money stories. I knew this girl, right? This girl's an OnlyFans girl. And I met her through the Fresh and Fit people, right? And all she is some kind of like OnlyFans model, and she's getting flued out and shit. She's pretty hot, not gonna lie. But I asked her, like, so what do you do? She's like, well, I just travel and live my life. And then I was like, okay. And I was like, she told me the Canadian government pays her every month for being unemployed. So they're like giving out like basically UBI and giving out free money to like girls who are just, hustling on OnlyFans. Because I guess OnlyFans is like 1099. So it's like really you just have to report what you feel like reporting. It's just all fake economy, fake funny money everywhere. So I mean, people like got no jobs. They're just like chilling out, getting their government money, and we think this can keep going. But the people who are facilitating this are like not we're talking about the girl I was just mentioning, but a lot of these people are the bottom feeders of society. So they're just keeping this whole fake thing going.
Thank you. Colby Smith with the Financial Times. On the need to slow the pace of rate increases at some point, is a downshift contingent on a string of better inflation data specifically between now and, let's say, the December meeting? Or is that something that the Fed could potentially proceed with independent of that data, given the lagged effects that you mentioned?
So a couple things on that. We do need to see inflation coming down decisively, and good evidence of that would be a series of down monthly readings. Of course, that's what we'd all love to see, but I've never thought of that as the appropriate test for slowing the pace of increases or for identifying the appropriately restrictive level that we're aiming for. We need to bring our policy stance down to a level that's sufficiently restrictive to bring inflation down to our 2% objective over the medium term. How will we know that we've reached that level? Well, we'll take into account the full range of analysis and data that bear on that question, guided by our assessment of how much financial conditions have tightened, the effects that tightening is actually having on the real economy and on inflation, taking into consideration lags, as I mentioned. We will be looking at real rates, for example, all across the yield curve and all other financial conditions, and as we make that assessment.
Hi, Howard Schneider with Reuters. Look, I'm sure there's going to be tons of confusion out there about whether this means you're going to slow in December or not. Would you say that the bias right now is not for another 75 basis point increase?
So what I want to do is put that question of pace in the context of our broader tightening program, if I may, and hit to talk about the statement language along the way. So I think you can think about our tightening program as really addressing three questions. The first of which was and has been how fast to go. The second is how high.
Is he like reading off of this? Seems like this is like a setup question. He's like, he responded to this very structured and orderly. Like, I have a 3-part reply to this random question from you. I don't know if they give them the questions beforehand or what. But anyways, let's hear this part.
To raise our policy rate. And the third will be eventually how long to remain at a restrictive level. So on the first question, how fast to tighten policy, it's been very important that we move expeditiously, and we have clearly done so. We've moved 3.75% since March, admittedly from a base of 0. It's a historically fast pace, and that's certainly appropriate. Given the persistence and strength in inflation and the low level from which we started. So now we come to the second question, which is how high to raise our policy rate. And we're saying that we'd raise that rate to a level that's sufficiently restrictive to bring inflation to our 2% target over time. And we put that into our post-meeting statement because that really does become the important question we think now is how far to go. And I'll talk more about that. We think there's some ground to cover but before we meet that test, and that's why we say that ongoing rate increases will be appropriate. And as I mentioned, incoming data between the meetings, both the strong labor market report, but particularly the CPI report, do suggest to me that we may ultimately move to higher levels than we thought at the time of the September meeting. That level is very uncertain, though, and I would say, we're going to find it over time. Of course, with the lags between policy and economic activity, there's a lot of uncertainty. So we note that in determining the pace of future increases, we'll take into account the cumulative tightening of monetary policy, as well as the lags with which monetary policy affects economic activity and inflation. Mm-hmm. So I would say as we come closer to that level, move more into restrictive territory, the question of speed becomes less important than the second and third questions. And that's why I've said at the last 2 press conferences that at some point it will become appropriate to slow the pace of increases. So that time.
So he is aggressively raising these rates he's raising the rates. What they're saying is like this speed at what he's raising, because earlier this year, let me just double check the Federal Reserve. I think they're at 0% earlier this year. Beats chart. 2 seconds. We'll pull this up. So this is the aggression that they're talking about in which they're raising the rates. Okay. So this is the year of 2022, right? And so in the beginning of the year, we were at 0%, right? And then we raised them here. Looks like, let me see, January, April. I don't know if I don't have the fucking date exactly in here. Looks like somewhere in March about. And then they raised them after April, and then they've just been aggressively raising them. And it's necessary because I feel like these rates have been, see, These rates have been low, let's see, for 10 years. So yeah, this is the highest they've been in 10 years. When Trump came in office, they started raising them. Looks like they were low as hell for Obama. Yeah, it looks like as soon as Obama came into office, they dropped the rates to 0%. After under Bush, they raised the rates high for his last term. So then we had Obama when they were just zero across the board here, and then they started raising them again for Trump's, and now we're back down to zero at the end of 2020 during the pandemic because Joe Biden took office, and I think they were doing that. But then, yeah, this is when the talk of the rumor of the rates being raised that killed the bull market as well, the 2021 bull market in quarter 4. So it's just a big fucking mess. So looking like historically they do come down violently though within a year. But 24 looked like this went up here. So if we go past 6%, okay, let's go back 25 years. I mean, yeah, we had like in the 80s, yeah, with like 20% interest rate. That was like during to the economic crash there. Massive fucking just shit was all fucked up, and even in Japan it was. So, but in the big picture of things, we are pretty low. We are larger than in our last hump, but again, we just had unprecedented funds that were printed nonstop. So what are we supposed to do? We have to take our fucking medicine. You know, you have to increase your interest rates to slow down the velocity of money, and bring some stability back to the economy. And we talk about price stability.
Time is coming, and it may come as soon as the next meeting or the one after that. No.
Yeah, and Sam's in the house. He says if there's a red wave, they'll raise them up. I think, barring any mail-in ballot situations, I think that if the elections are, you know, I think I would be very surprised if I didn't see a giant red wave for the midterms, because I think people are just fed up. I think the woke shit. I think people are willing to put up with the woke shit when they have money in their bank accounts and stuff. But when you're like, okay, I'm broke and I have to like send my kid to drag queen story hour, or like I'm gonna get ridiculed here, and there's no jobs in this town, and there's no fucking, you know, things for me to advance myself financially. Like when you hurt people's pocketbooks, you know, they get red pilled, and they get red pilled on the truth. And we're gonna see the elections are in a few days here, but there's a lot of shit going down, man. Like that fucking what's going on with this gay sex scandal? That's Pelosi's husband. He's like fighting with a gay guy with a hammer who's like tweaking on drugs. You know, this is the third in command of the United States. President is Joe Biden, Vice President's Kamala Harris, and the Speaker of the House is Nancy Pelosi. This is the third in command. She's having this shit happen. Anyways, let's just go back. I mean, it's all a goddamn freak show. It's just all, and these people are just all retarded, and they're obviously corrupt as fuck. We're like, there's corruption in Russia. There's corruption in Africa. There's corruption in America too, bro. America probably invented corruption. So, you know, these people are all in it for themselves. So don't believe in any savior. Don't believe in any of this fucking, they're going to come and save the day. They're just running their own fucking scam at a higher level. We're trying to do our things. We're trying to get our way in life, and they are too. But this man is telling the people the truth. And I believe him in that sense that he's not going to be slowing down the growth rate of these interest rates. He's not going to be lowering these interest rates anytime soon.
No decision has been made. It is likely we'll have a discussion about this at the next meeting, a discussion. To be clear, let me say again, the question of when to moderate the pace of increases is now much less important than the question of how high to raise rates and how long to keep monetary policy restricted, which really will be our principal focus.
If I could follow up on that, to what degree was there an importance or weight given to a need to signal this possibility now, given all the concerns really around the globe about
what is this guy's hair? Does this guy not take care of himself? What's wrong with this person?
Fed policy sort of driving ahead, and everybody else, you know, dealing with their own stress as a result?
Well,
shut up and take my money.
Oh, we got a donation. Thank you so much for the super chat. JMT 999 super chat with nothing to say. Thank you so much. Yeah, if you want me to address a certain question, send a super chat. I'll read it. I'll pull it up on the screen and I'll answer your question particularly. But like I said, this meeting just concluded like about 30 minutes ago, and he goes on and on. But again, he keeps on talking about restricting the monetary policy, and this is what needs to be done to kind of bring balance to the global economy, because the dollar is still soaring and shitting on all these currencies. I mean, the dollar is 1-to-1 with the Great British Pound. People around the world are feeling it, and American. This is like the one time in my life I'm actually really proud being American, because my business is paid in dollars. And my life in Japan every day is getting cheaper because the Japanese yen is shitting the bed. Luckily for me, I'm getting paid in dollars, so I'm protected. Can't say that for everybody. And this is why I tell you guys, you got to get independent as possible.
I'm pleased that we have moved as fast as we have. I don't think we've over tightened. I think there's very difficult to make a case that our current level is too tight, given that inflation still runs well above the federal funds rate. So I think that at this meeting, the last two meetings, as I've mentioned, I've said that there would come a point, and this was a meeting at which we had a discussion about what that might mean, and we did discuss this, and as I mentioned, we'll discuss it again in December. But there's I don't have any sense that we've over tightened or moved too fast. I think it's been good and a successful program. That we've gotten this far this fast. Remember though that we still think there's a need for ongoing rate increases, and we have some ground left to cover here, and cover it we will.
So this is we have some ground left to cover here. Cover we will, and we have no plan whatsoever of slowing down our rate of raising interest rates. And I'm telling you, this shit's gonna go up, dude. I would not be surprised. So what we're at, okay, let me pull the chart back up. So
shut up and take my money.
We got super chat here. Give me a second. Let me pull this chart up because I want to pull back the history. Okay. Federal Reserve rates chart 2022, tradingeconomics.com. Here we go. Okay. So let's bring this back up. So he's saying they got to do what they need to do to bring these rates down. And these are all-time highs since fucking 2017, man, or 2007 rather. You know what I mean? NBA crypto boy 49.99 super chat. That is a massive donation, bro. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate that. What do you think the Dems will throw up there for 2024? Michelle, dude, they will probably keep Sleepy Joe in. That guy is fucking. He's weekend at Bernie's. I think personally, this is what I think they need to happen. Okay. I don't care what anybody says. I still think Trump needs to be president again, because whether you like it or not, Trump has brought a unifying, peaceful voice to his supporters. Okay. It's not Trump people that are out there burning down cities and doing shit for BLM. Okay. It's not them out there diddling children. They're not the trans people and all that stuff. These are just regular people who are like, fuck him, just want to make money and be left alone. And what Trump did in 4 years, despite the entire media attacking him, you say whatever you want to say, but at those times, reflect in your life, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, okay? Were those good years in your life? Were those good financial years? Were you getting by and everything was doing okay? I mean, the answer is yes. 9 times out of 10, the answer is yes, right? Trump and DeSantis need to just run, because DeSantis has gotten so much clout for the way he ran Florida. He got criticized at first, and then all the fucking New Yorkers and all the fucking Californians weaseled their way down to Florida and stank it up. And they're retreating back to their shitholes now. But the bottom line is these two guys thrived and saved America and saved Florida's economy without falling into this draconian shit and kind of remembering free market capitalism and the core shit that made America. And so I just think that's what needs to be happening in 2024. So who will the Democrats put up in 2024? That's hard to say. That's really hard to see. But if I had to put money on it, it would be Sleepy Joe, unless they off his ass. And then Kamala, I don't think she can do it. I think they would give her a run. Maybe Kamala Harris. or not Kamala Harris, excuse me, Kamala Hilton. I don't know. They might drag fucking Hillary out from the woodworks, but who knows, man? Kanye says he's going to run 2024. Kanye's been holding his ground, man. I like the way he handled himself in the Lex Friedman podcast as well. This guy says Trump is a terrible candidate anyways. If he runs, he will lose. Swing voters and our tradcons are not going to vote for him. Plus, he is probably going to be indicted. Oh, my God. This is not the channel for you, buddy. I'll just tell you right now. This is not the channel for you. Anyways, let's get this off and let's get back to our Jerome Powell. So everybody pushed the shot. Bolsonaro pushed the shot. Every based political leader you're going to talk about pushed the shot. Just so you know.
Nick Tamaros of the Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, core PCE inflation on a 3 or 6 month annualized basis and on a 12-month basis has been running in the high fours, close to 5%. Is there any reason to think you won't have to raise rates at least above that level to be confident that you are imparting enough restraint to bring inflation down?
So this is the question of does the policy rate need to get above the inflation rate? And I would say there are a range of views on that. That's the classic Taylor principle view. But I would think you'd look more at a forward, a forward-looking measure of inflation to look at that. But I think the answer is we'll want to get the policy rate to a level where it is where the real interest rate is positive. We will want to do that. I do not think of it as the single and only touchstone, though. I think you put some weight on that. You also put some weight on rates across the curve. Very few people borrow at the short end at the federal funds rate, for example. So households and businesses, if they're very meaningfully positive interest rates all across the curve for them, credit spreads are larger, so borrowing rates are significantly higher, and I think financial conditions have tightened quite a bit. So I would look at that as an important feature. I'd put some weight on it, but I wouldn't say it's something that is the single dominant thing to look at.
If I could follow up, what is your best assessment or the staff's best assessment right now of the current rate of underlying inflation?
I don't have a specific number for you there. So there are many models that look at that. And I mean, one way to look at it is that it's a pretty stationary object, and that when inflation runs above that level, for sure, substantially above for some time, you'll see it move up, but the movement will be fairly gradual. So I think that's what the principal models would tend to say. But I wouldn't want to land on any one assessment. There are many different, as you know, people who publish an assessment of underlying inflation.
Thank you.
Gina. Hi, Chair Powell. Thank you for taking our questions. Gina Smilek, New York Times. I wonder, do you see any evidence at this stage that inflation is or is at risk of becoming entrenched?
Is inflation becoming entrenched? So I guess I would start by pointing to expectations. So if we saw longer term expectations moving up, that would be very troubling. And they were moving up a little bit at the middle part of this year, and they've moved now back down. That's one piece of data. Shorter term inflation expectations moved up between the last meeting and this meeting. And we don't think those are as indicative, but they may be important in the wage setting process. There's a school of thought that believes that. So that's very concerning. I guess the other thing I would say is that the longer we're now 18 months into this episode of high inflation, and we don't have a clearly identified scientific way of understanding at what point inflation becomes entrenched. And so the thing we need to do from a risk management standpoint is to use our tools forcefully but thoughtfully and get inflation under control, get it down to 2%, get it behind us. That's what we really need to do and what we're strongly committed to doing.
Rachel.
Hi, Chair Powell. Thank you for taking our questions. Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. The statement points to lag times. I'm wondering if you can walk us through how you judge those lag effects, what that timeline looks like over the coming months or even a year, and where you would expect it to show up in different parts of the economy.
Yeah. So the way I would think about that is, it's a commonly for a long time thought that monetary policy works with long and variable lags, and that it works first on financial conditions, and then on economic activity, and then perhaps later than that even on inflation. So that's been the thinking for a long time. There was an old literature that made those lags out to be fairly long. There's newer literature that says that they're shorter. And the truth is, we don't have a lot of data of inflation of this high in what is now the modern economy. One big difference now is that it used to be that you would raise the federal funds rate, financial conditions would react, and then that would affect economic activity and inflation. Now, financial conditions react well before, in expectation of monetary policy. That's the way it has moved for a quarter of a century, is in the direction of financial conditions, then monetary policy, because the markets are thinking, what is the central bank going to do? And there are plenty of economists that also think that once financial conditions change, that the effects on the economy are actually faster than they would have been before. We don't know that. I guess the thing that I would say is it's highly uncertain. And so from a risk management standpoint, it would be irresponsible not to ignore them, but you want to consider them, but not take them literally. So I think it's a very difficult place to be, but I would tend to want to be in the middle, looking carefully at what's actually happening with the economy, and trying to make good decisions from a risk management standpoint, remembering, of course, that if we were to over tighten, we could then use our tools strongly to support the economy. Whereas if we don't get inflation under control because we don't tighten enough, now we're in a situation where inflation will become entrenched, and the costs, the employment costs in particular, will be much higher potentially. So from a risk management standpoint, we want to be sure that we don't make the mistake of either failing to tighten enough or loosening policy too soon.
And if I could follow up, should we interpret the addition to the statement to mean that more weight is put into those lag effects than they would have been after previous rate hikes?
So I think as we move now into restrictive territory, as we make these ongoing rate hikes and policy becomes more restrictive, it'll be appropriate now to be thinking more about lag. Of course, we think about the lags are just sort of a basic part of monetary policy, but we will be thinking about them. But we won't be, I think we'll be considering them, but because it's appropriate to do so. Let me say this: it is very premature to be thinking about pausing. So people, when they hear lags, they think about a pause. It's very premature, in my view, to think about or be talking about pausing our rate hike. We have a ways to go. Our policy, we need.
So he keeps on reiterating that we have a ways to go. We are going to keep going. There's no breaks on this. They will probably I wouldn't be surprised to see them raising rates throughout 2023 as well. Because they have so many meetings scheduled. Three. Yeah, here we go. So here's all the meetings scheduled out for 2023. So the next meeting is December 14th. And then after that, it's January 31st to February 1st. And then March. And then taking off April and May, June, July. I mean, yeah, see. 13, 14, 15, they said it's changing. And then, yeah. Because we got to, I mean, there's just a ways to go. He's saying it here, and I believe him. I really do.
Ongoing rate hikes to get to that level of sufficiently restrictive, and we don't really know exactly where that is. We have a sense, and we'll write down in the December meeting a new summary of economic projections, which updates that. But I would expect us to continue to update it based on what we're seeing with incoming data.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Neil Irwin with Axios. as you look around the economy, the clearest impact of your tightening so far has been on housing, maybe some venture-funded tech companies. It's been relatively narrow in terms of the labor market, consumer demand. A lot of sectors you don't see a ton of effect. Is the pathway and channels through which monetary policy works changing? Is it narrower than it used to be? And on housing in particular, are you at all worried that you're crimping housing supply in ways that might cause problems down the road?
I don't know that the channels through which policy works have changed that much. I would say a big channel is the labor market, and the labor market is very, very strong, very strong. And households, of course, have strong balance sheets. And so we go into this with a strong labor market and excess demand in the labor market, as you can see through many different things, and also with households who have strong spending power built up. So it may take time. It may take resolve. It may take patience. It's likely to get inflation down. I think you see from our forecasts and others that it will take some time for inflation to come down. It'll take time, we think. So, sorry, was I getting to your question there? Oh, housing, the housing part of it. Yeah. So, we look at housing. Of course, housing is significantly affected by these higher rates, which are really back where they were before the global financial crisis. They're not historically high, but they're much higher than they've been. And you're seeing housing activity decline. You're seeing housing prices growing at a faster rate, and in some parts of the country declining. I would say the housing market was very overheated for the couple of years after the pandemic as demand increased and rates were low. We all know the stories of how overheated the housing market was, prices going up, many, many bidders, no conditions, that kind of thing. So the housing market needs to get back into a balance between supply and demand. We're well aware of what's going on there. From a financial stability standpoint, we didn't see in this cycle the kinds of poor credit underwriting that we saw before the global financial crisis. Housing credit was very much more carefully managed by the lenders. Mm-hmm. So it's a very different situation and doesn't appear to present financial stability issues. But no, we do understand that's really where a very big effect of our policies is.
Victoria.
Hi, Victoria Guida with Politico. I wanted to ask about the labor market. You mentioned early on again that job openings are very high compared to available workers. And I'm just curious to what extent you do and don't draw a signal from that. So, for example, if wage growth is slowing and if maybe the unemployment rate starts to tick up, will that make you sort of decrease your focus on job openings? What do you see? Are wages what's really important? How are you thinking about the labor market as it relates to inflation?
So we talk a lot about vacancies and the vacancy to unemployed rate, but it's just one. It's just another data series. It's been unusually important in this cycle because it's been so out of line. But so has quits, so have wages. So we look at a very wide range of data on the labor market. So I'd start with unemployment, which is typically the single statistic you would look to, is at a 50-year low, 3.5%. We're getting really nothing in labor supply now.
That's just because people not working. That's why it's so low.
We had, I think, a very small increase this year, which we had really thought we would get that back. Most analysts thought we would get some labor supply coming in. You mentioned wages. So I guess I would characterize that as sort of a mixed picture. It's true with average hourly earnings you see. So I would call it a flattening out at a level that's well above the level that would be consistent over time with 2% inflation, assuming a reasonable productivity. There with the ECI reading this week, again, a mixed picture. The headline number was a disappointment. Let's just say it was high. It didn't show a decline. There's some rays of light inside, that if you look at private sector workers, that did come down. The compensation did come down. But overall, though, the broader picture is of an overheated labor market where demand substantially exceeds supply. Job creation still exceeds, the sort of the level that would hold the market where it is. So that's the picture. Do we see? We keep looking for signs that sort of the beginning of a gradual softening is happening. And maybe that's there, but it's not. It's not obvious to me because wages aren't coming down. They're just moving sideways at an elevated level, both ECI and average hourly earnings. We would love to see vacancies coming down, quits coming down. They are coming down. Vacancies are below their all-time high, but not by as much as we thought, because the data series is volatile. We never take any one reading. We always look at 2 or 3. So it's a mixed picture. I don't see the case for real softening just yet, but we look at, as I just showed you, we look at a very broad range of data on the labor market.
So do you see wages as being a significant driver of inflation?
I think wages have an effect on inflation, and inflation has an effect on wages. I think that's always been the case. There's always a going back and forth. The question is that really elevated right now? I don't think so. I don't think wages are the principal story of why prices are going up. I don't think that. I also don't think that we see a wage price spiral. But again, it's not something you can, once you see it, you're in trouble. So we don't want to see it. We want wages to go up. We just want them to go up at a level that's sustainable with and consistent with 2% inflation. And we do think that given the data that we have, that this labor market can soften without having to soften as much as history would indicate through the unemployment channel. It can soften through job openings declining. We think there's room for that, but we won't know that. That'll be discovered empirically.
Thank you so much. Kayla Tausche from CNBC. Earlier last month, the United Nations warned that there could be a global recession if central banks didn't change course. The new UK Prime Minister warned of a profound economic crisis there. And I'm wondering how the Fed is weighing international developments in light of a very strong economy here in the US that would seem to be bucking those trends.
So, of course, we keep close tabs on economic developments and also geopolitical developments that are relevant to the economy abroad. We're in very frequent contact with our foreign counterparts, both through the IMF meetings and the regular meetings with central banks that we have, and I have one this weekend with many central bankers. So we're in touch with all of that. So I guess it's clearly a difficult time in the global economy. We're seeing very high inflation in Europe, significantly because of high energy prices related to the war in Ukraine, and we're seeing China's having issues with the zero COVID policy and much slower growth than we're used to seeing.
Low key shitting on China and Russia. Okay.
So we see those difficulties. The strong dollar is a challenge for some countries, but we take all of that into account in our models. We think about the spillovers and that sort of thing. Here in the United States, we have a strong economy, and we have an economy where inflation is running at 5%, core PCE inflation, which is a really good indicator of.
All right, this guy cracks me up, bro. This is not the channel for you. Most entrepreneurs would be priced out of the economy in the long run. They want to make it impossible for people to be self-reliant. The data just doesn't add up, buddy. There's more self-made millionaires every single year. You are fucking negative Nancy. You must be a joy to be hanging out with, eh? What's wrong with you today? Dude, this is just showing that their way of doing things is not working. Hey, buddy.
Hey, what's going on?
This is Harry Zikos. He's a licensed real estate broker in the state of New York. He's been doing this for years. This has a direct relationship to the real estate market, correct?
Without a doubt.
Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit, or you just want to sit there?
Well, it's no secret if you took a micro or macroeconomics class that there is an inverse relationship between the price and yield meaning interest rates or the cost of debt. If you are interested in real estate purchasing, right now is not a good time to jump in full, head first. Let's put it that way. If the Fed is going to continue,
why is that?
If the Fed's going to continue increasing interest rates, that means the prices have to come down, and sellers are still on the fence about whether or not they should be reducing their price. And that's ultimately what's attributing to a lot of the distortion in the market for deals that are on market today. I can tell you, like 1/3 of my
What do you
desk
mean by
has
distortion?
unrealistic.
I don't understand what you're saying. What do you mean by distortion?
So there is a disconnect right now, John, between sellers and buyers. Basically, some people still think that the prices of 1.5 years ago are still today's market,
Mhm.
and the comps of closed sales haven't
What's
really
comp?
the comparable closed sales.
Okay, and what is that?
So the historical sales of like property in an immediate area. So let's say you take like a condo and you
Mhm.
look at, the condos that had sold in the same building for the last 18 months.
Mhm.
Only the last couple of months will be anything even close to remotely
So you're
usable.
okay. You take a comp on a property, it means that people around you who have been selling their properties is going to be like kind of the equivalent which you can sell yours. So if everybody's selling your house, their condo for $1 million, then theoretically yours is worth $1 million as well.
Hypothetically, yeah, depending on the time and depending on the macro around everything.
What about square footage and stuff like that? Does that matter?
It's absolutely relative. Most of the time, deals are priced on a per square foot basis when it comes down to a condo or a single family home, not considering any particular considerations for the land or like the lot or the neighborhood. But then you also have the whole other side, which is investment properties, which are solely traded on capitalization rates or the rate of return. Which the capitalization rates for them to make sense today, if you use debt, need to increase, meaning the prices have to come down.
And these are making the prices go up right now, these raise rates, yeah?
Well, the increasing of the rates is making the prices come down.
But it's making the mortgage rates go up, which make it more expensive to, because you have to
Yes,
pay more interest over time, correct?
correct, exactly. The
For
cost of the
normies, right?
money is
This is for like people, the average person. If you're making like $350,000 a year, does this really affect you too much?
not really, not really. If you have income safety and stability, if you own your job or you own a business and you have a good way of having a moat around your income, or you're incredibly valuable to an organization that's funded into the future, you should be okay. But what this would potentially be useful for that type of caliber individual is this is the time to get your dry powder ready, to get out of any debt that doesn't really pay you to own it, and to be ready for opportunities that should show up in the next 6 to 18 months, potentially.
All right, let's see what our buddy Jerome has to say.
Sounds
What's
good.
going on for us is the way we see it is running at 5.1% on a 12-month basis and sort of similar to that on a 3, 6, and 9-month basis. So we know that we need to use our tools to get inflation under control. The world's not going to be better off if we fail to do that. That's a task we need to do. Price stability in the United States is a good thing for the global economy over a long period of time. Price stability is the kind of thing that pays dividends for our economy for decades, hopefully, even though it may be difficult to get it back. Getting it back is something that provides value to the people we serve for the long run.
If I could just follow up on that. Thank you. The Fed has acknowledged in the past that that the tools that you have don't affect things like energy and food prices that stem from some of those conflicts overseas. And they're some of the biggest pain points for consumers. So as you pursue the current path that you've outlined, is there a risk that some of those prices simply don't come down?
So we don't directly affect, for the most part, food and energy prices, but the demand channel does affect them just at the margin. The thing about the United States is that we also have strong, in many other jurisdictions, the principal problem really is energy. In the United States, we also have a demand issue. We've got an imbalance between demand and supply, which you see in many parts of the economy. So our tools are well suited to work on that problem, and that's what we're doing. You're right, though. We don't, the price of oil is set globally, and it's not something we can affect. I think by the actions that we take, though, we help keep longer term inflation expectations anchored and keep the public believing in 2% inflation by the things that we do, even in times when energy is part of the story of why inflation is high.
Hi, Chair Powell, Janelle Marti with Bloomberg. So the Fed is facing 2 more ethics-related incidents with the revision of the financial statements from President Bostic and President Bullard speaking at a closed event. So some senators, like Elizabeth Warren, are saying that this is a sign of greater ethics problems at the Fed. Could you talk about what this does to the public's trust in the bank and what the Fed is doing to prevent this kind of behavior from becoming common?
Sure. So you're right. The public's trust is really the Fed's and any central bank's most important asset. And anytime one of us, one of the policymakers violates or falls short of those rules, we do risk undermining that trust. And we take that very seriously. We do. So at the beginning of our meeting yesterday, actually, we had a committee discussion of the full committee on the importance of holding ourselves individually and collectively accountable for knowing and following the high standard that's set out in our existing rules with respect to both personal investment activities and external communications. We've taken a number of steps, and I would just say we do understand how important those issues are. I would say that our new investment program that we have is up now and running, and actually it was through that the problems with President Bostic's disclosures were discovered when he filed his new disclosures. That's, we now have a central group here at the Board of Governors that looks into disclosures and follows them and approves people's disclosures, and also all of their trades. Any trade anyone has to make who's covered has to be pre-approved. And there's a lag. It has to be pre-approved 45 days before it happens. So there's no ability to game market. So it's a really good system. It worked here. And I think we all said to each other yesterday morning, we recommitted to each other and to this institution to hold ourselves to the highest standards and avoid these problems.
Do you have an update on the investigations that are pending?
I don't. So as you know, I referred the matter concerning President Bostic to the Inspector General, and once that happens, I don't discuss it with the Inspector General with anybody. It's just the Inspector General has the ability to do investigations. We don't really have that, so that's what he's doing.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Television and Radio. Earlier this year, you touted the 3-month bill yield out to 18 months as the yield curve with 100% explanatory power. And you said, quote, if it's inverted, that means the Fed's going to cut, which means the economy is weak. That curve is only 2 basis points away from inversion now. So I'm wondering why you are so confident that you have not over tightened, particularly given that rates work with a lag.
Well, so we do monitor the near-term forward spread. You're right, and that's been our preferred measure. We think it, just empirically, it dominates the ones that people tend to look at, which is 2s, 10s, and things like that. So it's not inverted, and also you have to look at why the rate curve is doing what it's doing. It can be doing that because it expects cuts, or because it expects inflation to come down. In this case, if you're in a situation where the markets are pricing in significant declines in inflation, that's going to affect the forward curve. So yes, we monitor it. You're right, and that's what I would say.
If I could follow up, you also said several meetings ago that the risk of doing too little outweighed the risk of doing too much. Is what you're trying to tell us today is that risk assessment has changed a little bit?
Well, what's happened is time has passed, and we've raised interest rates by 375 basis points. I would not change a word in that statement, though. I think until we get inflation down, you'll be hearing that from me. Again, if we over tighten, and we don't want to, we want to get this exactly right. But if we over tighten, then we have the ability with our tools, which are powerful, to, as we showed at the beginning of the pandemic episode.
Such a cop out.
What is?
No, because right there he just like dovetailed that, like, oh, we can always print money if we have to. We can always print if we have to. Like the markets didn't react to when he said this earlier today.
Yeah. I mean, you can see it's just a lot of, like, he just basically consistently reiterating the point that they are absolutely gonna be fucking raising the rates. He just has not hinted at one point that they're doing the wrong thing. What do you think? What's your outlook on this economically from the macro? Are you worried about this? You freaking out?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I know a lot of people in my industry are freaking out. If
Are
they
these old boomer types?
the boomer types, also the people that have only been in the industry for like the last 5 to maybe 8 years, they haven't really seen a 2008 event. I got started in the last recession, so I have some memory of that, and I was somewhat involved in my parents' office at the time, so I was exposed to it. But no broker that started, since let's call it 2011, 2012, nobody has seen an interest rate increasing environment to this degree of increases and this fast of an increase. We're talking 3.75% increase on the federal funds rate, which is where they lend money to other lending institutions because that's how money is created. If that's where if they increase the rates that quickly in under a year, this is going to be putting a lot of people out of work. What I could tell you anecdotally, John, on like job applications for property management companies and other adjacent real estate related fields, they're getting inundated with applications from mortgage loan officers, mortgage brokers, real estate agents, title insurance salespeople, like everyone involved in the sales of these assets on a commission basis is losing their shit. So it's going to be pretty frothy to see what occurs. But ultimately the macro is just looking at a strong dollar, not a time to just throw money around, not a time to bet on Shiba Inu or whatever, shit coin that's out there, to keep this crypto relative. And it's going to get tight. Tighten the belt. Don't spend that much money when you don't have to,
Thing?
Repeat that. Would you mind? Sorry.
Do you think it's a good thing that they're tightening everything?
I think it sucks. The party's over. They're taking away the punch bowl, but it will create a lot better practice in the economy, a lot better market participants. People are going to start looking at, okay, if this doesn't pay me to own it, if the monthly payment is grossly outweighed from what I used to pay historically, why am I going to pay this sticker price? It's going to force people to treat their money with more respect. Right. Ultimately, they really want to do, John, they want to take jobs out. They're trying to stop a wage price spiral, which if the costs of goods and services keeps increasing and the cost of wages keeps increasing in tandem, they want to avoid that kind of what's it called? The Weimar Republic, Venezuelan hyperinflation situation. That's what they're trying to avoid right now. And with the struggle in the Ukraine at the same time, this creates a macro environment that allows the US dollar to still be the best looking girl in the room, even if it's a room of ugly chicks, So this is advantageous to hold dollars, to earn dollars, to save in dollars. My biggest fear, truthfully, is a run on the bank, but I think that's when they're going to bring about their CBDCs, their central bank digital currency. But it's anybody's ball game. Nobody can predict the future.
I think this is good. You didn't answer my question. You think this is good or not?
I think this is great. I think this is amazing. Yeah, sorry about that.
I think this is good too because I'm planning to cash out in 2025. I'm thinking down the road. I'm not thinking right now.
Right.
Now is the time to be accumulating in all areas, right? Maybe not in real estate, but definitely crypto right now is relatively cheap. We have some data models that we're working on. I have a guy that I'm working with, and the one model we have, we do believe that the low is in for Bitcoin. Because these Fed meetings, the thing is this too, if the Fed meetings keep on, raising rates every time, the market's going to become kind of numb to it. Like, oh, okay, it's another market rate. You were just increasing the tolerance level of what the average person can handle. And then once that gets loosened up, because they have to keep printing money, it's inevitable, and they have to bring these rates down, right? That's when the money's made. Money's made when the rates are down. So here, we'll see what happens. Let's continue on here.
If that happens, if that's necessary. On the other hand, if you make the mistake in the other direction and you let this drag on, then it's a year or two down the road and you're realizing inflation behaving the way it can, you're realizing that you didn't actually get it. You have to go back in. By then, the risk really is that it has become entrenched in people's thinking.
Yeah.
And you know, the record is that the employment costs, the cost to the people that we don't want to hurt, you know, they go up with the passage of time. That's really how I look at it. So that isn't going to change. What has changed, though, you're right, is we're farther along now. And I think as we're farther along, we're now focused on that. You know, what's the level we need to get to rates. And you know, I don't know what we'll do when we get there. By the way, it doesn't. We'll have to see. There's been no decision or discussion around exactly what steps we would take at that point. But the first thing is to find your way there.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. Just to go back to housing for a minute, you mentioned the impact that rate increases have had on housing. Home sales are down 25% in the past year and so forth, but none of this is really showing up in, as you know, in the government's inflation measures. And as we go forward, private real-time data is clearly showing these hits to housing. Are you going to need to put a greater weight on that in order to ascertain things like whether there's over-tightening going on? Or will you still focus as much on the more lagging government indicators?
So this is an interesting subject. So I start by saying, I guess, that the measure that's in the CPI and the PCE, it captures rents for all tenants, not just new leases. And that makes sense, actually, because that for that reason, that conceptually, that's sort of the right target for monetary policy. And the same thing is true for owner's equivalent rent, which comes off of it's a reweighting of tenant rents. The private measures are of course good at picking up the at the margin the new leases, and you know they tell you a couple things. One thing is I think right now, if you look at the pattern of that series of the new leases, it's very pro-cyclical. So rents went up much more than the CPI and PCE rents did, and now they're coming down faster. So the implication is that there are still, as non-new leases roll over and become and expire, right? There's still in the pipeline, there's still some significant rate increases coming. Okay. But at some point, once you get through that, the new leases are going to tell you that what they're telling you is there will come a point at which rent inflation will start to come down. But that point is well out from where we are now. So we're well aware of that, of course, and we look at it. And but I would say that in terms of what the right way to think about inflation really is to look at the measure that we do look at, but considering that we also know that at some point you'll see rents coming down.
Great. And just a quick follow. It looks like stock and bond markets are reacting positively to your announcement so far. Is that something you wanted to see? Is that a problem, or how much that might affect your future policy to see this positive reaction?
You know, we're not targeting any one or two particular things. You know, our message should be, what I'm trying to do is make sure that our message is clear, which is that we think we have a ways to go. We have some ground to cover with interest rates before we get to.
So at the time of this video, he said that what time is it there, Harry?
Right now it's 4:45 p.m. So the stock market is closed.
Right. But this video came out around
2 p.m.
2 p.m. and
2:30, 3:30 around there.
So take a look here. This is the NASDAQ, the daily chart. So it pumped up into the meeting, but then it dumped hard, and now we're closed. We're out of the day.
Yep.
So I don't know if that's good. I don't know if the market is reacting good. The crypto market is relatively stable. Like I said, 3% drop.
Yeah, ETH is around like what, 1,500-1,600 still?
ETH 1,500, Bitcoin 20K.
Wow.
Yeah. So we'll see. Stock market though did not reacting too hot.
Before we get to that level of interest rates that we think is sufficiently restrictive, and putting that in the statement and identifying that as a goal is an important step. And that's meant to put that question really as the important one now going forward. I've also said that we think that the level of rates that we estimated in September, the incoming data suggests that that's actually going to be higher. And that's been the pattern. I mean, I would have little confidence that the forecast, if we made a forecast today, if we were doing an SEP today, the pattern has been that one after another, they go up, and, that'll end when it ends. But there's no sense that inflation is coming down. It just, if you look at I have a table of the last 12 months of 12-month readings, and there's really no pattern there. We're exactly where we were a year ago. So,
yeah.
Okay. So I would also say it's premature to discuss pausing, and it's not something that we're thinking.
That's talking about pausing the rate increases, saying, we just don't think that we're gonna be able to fucking stop doing this. He sounds stern. He sounds like we're gonna keep this motherfucker on, and because I think this is America's last stronghold on the globe too.
Yeah,
But I do think America's losing ground, but they're pimping on the world right now. Like, bitch, we got the strongest currency in the world. We will fucking smite all you lesser countries. And honestly, is there any? I think only the Swiss franc is not taking as much of a hit. Everything else is taking quite the shit.
I haven't looked at the Swiss franc to USD chart, but generally speaking, they have their own issues with a few Swiss banks having a new line of credit swap line with their euro dollars, which is basically dollars deposited outside of the United States in their banks. So there's basically been some talk around the town, and George Gammon went into this a little bit recently, where Credit Suisse and the Swiss National Bank have credit swap lines with the Federal Reserve directly to satisfy their dollar liabilities. So the Swiss aren't necessarily out of the weeds, but they're definitely a very stable political system, which is usually what drives currency stability, which of course is the yield, the dividend that you get for owning the treasury, owning that government debt, as well as having the most stable political system in the world, which, despite what anyone may think about recent times, it's irrelevant. The United States still to this day has the most. We have a revolution every 4 years, and very few people die. But I want to just say something real quick about what he was going into about owner's equivalent rent that the audience may not understand. It's basically how the Federal Reserve and their analysts analyze lease rates. They don't go on Zillow or any sort of apartments.com or some sort of tech company data aggregator, let alone real estate professional websites. They don't go into these databases and get real-time lease rates. They use an aggregated, antiquated form of determining what somebody renting in the form of owning through getting a mortgage and everything like that would pay today. So there is a lot of talk about how their numbers of owner's equivalent rent are grossly overblown, and that is attributing to the majority of the inflation. At this point, everyone in real estate, it has the firm belief that they just really want to kill the wealth effect from expensive assets, making few people feel like they can just spend money all willy-nilly, and they want to destroy demand and jobs at the end of the day.
We're gonna see what happens.
Let's see.
That's really not a conversation to be had now. We have a ways to go. And the last thing I'll say is that I would want people to understand our commitment to getting this done, and to not making the mistake of not doing enough, or the mistake of withdrawing our strong policy and doing that too soon. So those I control those messages, and that's my job.
Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. Thank you, Fed Chairman. So how big of a headwind is all the fiscal spending to what the Federal Reserve is trying to do to get inflation back to the 2% target?
In theory, it was a headwind this year, but I do think the broader context is that you have households that have these significant amounts of savings and can keep spending. I think those two things do tend to sort of counterbalance each other out. It appears consumer spending is still positive. It's at pretty modest growth levels, It's not shrinking, but people are, and the banks that deal with retail customers and many retailers will tell you that the consumers are still buying and they're still they're fine. So
Mhm.
I don't know how big the fiscal headwinds are, and they haven't shown up in the way that we thought they would in restraining spending. So it must have to do with the savings that people have.
What about the spending? There's tens of billions yet to be spent. I mean, from the Inflation Reduction Act, the American Rescue Plan, CHIPS Act, bipartisan infrastructure bill. How does that play into your thinking about the future?
It's demand is going to have some support from those savings, and also from the strong demand that's still in the labor market. We still see pretty significant demand and a tightening labor market in some respects. Although I think overall, I would say it's not really tightening or loosening. So we see those things, and what those things tell us is that our job is going to require some resolve and some patience over time. We're going to have to stick with this. That's just we take all that as a given, but we know what our objective is and we know what our tools can do, and that's how we think about it.
Thanks. We'll go to Nancy for the last question.
Hi, Chair Powell. Nancy Marshall-Genzer from Marketplace. I'm wondering, has the window for a soft landing narrowed? Do you still think it's possible?
Has it narrowed? Yes. Is it still possible? Yes. I think we've always said it was going to be difficult, but I think to the extent rates have to go higher and stay higher for longer, it becomes harder to see the path. It's narrowed. I would say the path is narrowed over the course of the last year, really. Hard to say. Again, I would say that the sort of array of data in the labor market is highly unusual, and to many economists, there is a path to. Ordinarily, there's a relationship to GDP going down and vacancies declining, translating into unemployment, or there's Okun's law. So all those things are relationships that are in the data, and they're very real. Data is a little bit different this time, though, because you have this tremendously high level of vacancies, and we think on a very steep part of the beverage curve. All I would say is that the job losses may turn out to be less than would be indicated by those traditional measures because job openings are so elevated and because the labor market is so strong. Again, that's going to be something we discover empirically. I think no one knows whether there's going to be a recession or not, and if so, how bad that recession would be. And our job is to restore price stability so that we can have a strong labor market that benefits all over time, and that's what we're going to do.
But just real quickly, why do you feel like the window has narrowed?
Because we haven't seen inflation coming down. The implication of inflation not coming down, and what we would expect by now to have seen is that as the supply side problems had resolved themselves, we would have expected goods inflation to come down by now, long since by now. And it really hasn't, although it has come down, but it's not to the extent we had hoped. At the same time, now you see services inflation, core services inflation moving up. And I just think that the inflation picture has become more and more challenging over the course of this year, without question. That means that we have to have policy be more restrictive, and that narrows the path to a soft landing, I would say.
Can you pause that for a second?
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught what he just said, but basically because of the last policies that we have to be more restrictive. But who has been restricting the supply of oil and other fuel sources for transporting these goods? Oil is the number one input cost on any physical supply chain. He was talking about goods inflation not coming down. Well, there's a little battle going on in Eastern Europe right now that might be attributing to it, but our policy response as a result is causing the very inflation to linger that he's using as a reason to increase interest rates. Make that make sense.
No, it seems like I said this earlier. I believe that a USA is losing its global stranglehold on the planet. And they'll say what you want to say, but it's pretty clear to me that they sabotage Nord Stream 1 and 2, as Russia was saying, like, you guys got all to pay us in Russian ruble, because that's how America got rich, by saying everybody's got to pay for oil in dollars, right?
Mhm.
And guess what? Remember Saddam Hussein? Well, he said, guess what? We're going to pay for oil in euros. And what happened?
Mhm.
We went over there and we America'd his ass, right?
Give him a dose of freedom.
Killed him, right? So this is just another attempt at America flexing to keep the global people under its thumb. Oh, but overall, for like people, the regular people in the world, I would say this is good news, because I view it like we're just pulling the slingshot back, because
Yeah.
we're going to shoot forward. And then when you shoot forward, you just got to make sure you buy assets that generate income for you and live off of the assets that are, live off the income that the assets are generating. That's how you get rich. You have your business and stuff like that. So that wraps up that section of the show. Did you hear about? You probably haven't heard about this. This guy that was killed, and he said the CIA were going to kill him. He tweeted that he was going to be killed by the CIA, and 2 days later he showed up missing. Have you heard about that?
I saw something on somebody's Twitter that doesn't even exist. Was that what we're talking about?
I'll pull it out right now. I'm going to talk about this. Is the second part, guys. This is pretty important because to talk about the government's control, it ties into the Fed meeting as well. So this is Delete Shitcoin. This is his guy's username, and this guy's real name is Nikolai Muchigian. Okay, and he was a MakerDAO co-founder. Okay, and he was helping make stable coins. He was helping make a lot of things happen in the crypto community, and he was rumored to have $1 billion in crypto, specifically Bitcoin. So CIA, Mossad, Petroli are running some kind of sex trafficking, entrapment, blackmail ring out of Puerto Rico and the Caribbean islands. They're going to frame me with a laptop planted by my ex-girlfriend, who was a spy. They will torture me to death. And if you look at this guy, looks like he would be totally conned by a female spy. But this guy is officially dead. So we got an article here talking about this. Really just wanted to talk about this briefly. This stinks of foul play. And it says, MakerDAO co-founder Nikolai Muchian was found dead Friday morning in San Juan, Puerto Rico. A lot of people are down in Puerto Rico because a lot of the tax laws are favorable to, you get like zero capital gains taxes on certain crypto assets, and you get an overall 4% tax rate while you're in Puerto Rico. Peter Schiff is down there.
Yep.
I know Logan Paul is down there. There's a lot of crypto-related people down there, but Puerto Rico is hard. Have you ever been to Puerto Rico?
I've never been. I know a lot of Puerto Ricans that
So
go between
Puerto
New York
Rico
and
Puerto Ricans you meet in America and Puerto Rico are two different things.
yeah.
Puerto Rico is a rough little island. There are good areas, but there's also bad areas. These motherfuckers are just still shooting each other down in the street with machine guns.
Jesus.
I mean, it happens in America too, but we're talking like gang level shootouts. A lot of these crypto nerds are going down there, and they're not street smart, and this shit's happening on the reg. So, a day before his death, Muchigan tweeted out about sex trafficking ring run by the CIA and some groups across Puerto Rico. Didn't mention the Mossad. So the Mossad, get ready, guys. All right.
Israeli intelligence.
The Mossad is like the CIA for Israel. Okay. And especially tying into all this Kanye stuff recently. All I'm just gonna say, I'll just say pay attention. Yeah. So this was the cryptic tweet he put out, and then he also put this out on August 2nd, August 6th. Before I thought it was Illuminati CIA people doing sophisticated moves to set me up because I was a threat to the central banking cartel. Now I realize these are people. These are probably the cheapest. Please, money can buy.
I think PIs, like private investigators' money.
Okay. Sent by local banking duopoly. Even round one chills in chat were smarter. So they're after him for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But I do believe it's because he had a lot of crypto. And I'll just continue with the article. So they said he was found dead swimming. I mean, is that not fucking suspicious as shit? 29-year-old cryptocurrency developer reportedly died early Friday morning after being dragged by sea currents on the beach in Condado. But some of his tweets before the incident suggest there could be more to his death than the public knows. I mean, clearly they got his ass.
Rest in peace.
Michigan's mysterious death comes a day after he tweeted about sex trafficking and blackmail ring being perpetrated by the CIA. This is probably what pushed them over. Mossad and pedo elites out of Puerto Rico and the Caribbean islands. They're going to frame me with a laptop planted by my ex-girlfriend who was a spy. They'll torture me to death. He went out like a G. I'll say that. He may have lived his life like a little little pussy, but he went out like a G. Good
He
for him.
predicted his death, man. That's wild.
In a tweet in September, Michigan said all three possibles are free. Oh, excuse me. In a tweet in September, Michigan said that there are three possible futures for him: being suicided by CIA brain damage slave asset, the worst nightmare of people who fucked with me up until now. I'm sure these are the only options. The worst night. Oh yeah, he thought he can beat them, right?
Good luck.
Severally tweeted about death threats and sophisticated attempts by the so-called CIA and aforementioned group in order to frame him up. While it's unclear what the connection the cryptocurrency had with the groups, the tweet he made with his personal account reads that he was a threat to the central banking cartel. Yeah. I mean, crypto is a legitimate threat. There is no ands, ifs, or buts about it. And I think this is why they're flexing their muscles so hard right now with the dollar, right? I think they are flexing their muscles right now with the dollar because they're trying to say, listen, here's the deal. You guys were telling us cash is trash. You guys were saying we don't need the dollar. Bitcoin is superior. Cryptocurrency is the future. Not anymore. You know, I think this is the government really flexing hard on the world, like fuck Bitcoin, USA. But you got to turn those printers back on. So this is a short-lived victory.
I definitely think it's a short-lived victory because if they were doing the right things from a budget management standpoint from the Treasury side, not the Federal Reserve side, because the Federal Reserve is just the central bank, the country still has to go into debt to fund the government budget. Like we still have a deficit. We don't have a surplus. We're not collecting taxes and putting away any money for a rainy day. We're still funding the government on budget deficits. So this deficit spending is still the problem. So how does that make sense at the long tail of the curve? I have no idea.
It doesn't, but they're just doing whatever they can do to keep the fucking control that they have. They're desperate. It's getting pretty desperate. You know, this is what like we said, what Ray Dalio said, we're at the fucking end. You know, with the end of America's glory, and some other country is going to take over. We don't know who, but they will. But we still got plenty of whale carcass to fucking scavenge off of, you know, so that's going to be okay. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. Tokyo Crypto Show. Thank you to Harry Zikos for popping in, giving us real estate analysis.